Hello, Fearless Schools podcast friends. I hope everyone out there is having a wonderful time and is gearing up for another scintillating edition of your Fearless Schools podcast, which is, of course, brought to you by that massively clever bunch at Creative Leadership Solutions. You know, it's true. Check out everything that CLS has to offer at www.creativeleadership.net on the internet, and your hair will be blown back, I promise, by everything they have stacked in their pantry. And you know what else is stacked up to the top shelf? This Fearless Schools podcast, where we continue to pull back the curtains on all things education, bold topics, big questions, great guests, innovative yet practical solutions, and much more. As always, I'm Dr. Drew Tomlin, your inquisitive podcast host and current administrator with 30 plus years experience in the schoolhouse. And joining me today, as always, on the Fearless Schools podcast is CLS Director of Professional Learning, Dr. Ann McCarty. How are you doing, Dr. Ann?
Drew, just when I thought we couldn't meet more edu heroes and people who have inspired our careers as leaders, we pull this one off.
Oh yeah, same. Just when I thought, and our guest is eagerly ready to tell us all about his wonderful insights and thoughts and everything like that. But before we get to our special guest today, there's another key person in the CLS universe, someone who's a creative leader, always ardently working on educational solutions. That's right, it's Dr. Doug Reeves with a special message for today's podcast on the segment we lovingly call Leave It to Reeves. Take it away, Dr. Reeves.
Hi, it's Doug Reeves. It's such a pleasure to say a few words about my friend Michael Fullen, who is truly a global leader in education. When you think of the people who have had a worldwide impact on education, Michael is at the top of the list, not only because of his thought leadership, but his writing that is simply extraordinary. He has focused a great deal on the value of educational change and how to turn ideas into action. The New Meaning of Educational Change is now in its 6th edition, and if you haven't read it, stop this tape right now and go out and buy it, because Michael's ideas on change are truly profound and meaningful and have been field tested around the world. He also wrote a profound book called What's Worth Fighting For? And I think that is the question before all of us as educators and leaders, because you can't fight every battle, but Michael has identified the things that are worth fighting for, and I think that's worth checking out as well. He also articulates the difference between the right path and the wrong path, and has called us to account for the many times on which we are on the wrong path. That's worth listening to as well. Finally, he was kind enough to help me on a project about initiative fatigue when we studied more than 2,000 school plans and found out that the greater the number of priorities that schools had, the worse their performance was. In Michael's wonderful turn of phrase, he said that the number of initiatives that a school has is inversely proportional to their gains in student achievement. So it's my great pleasure to thank Michael, and not only for being on this podcast, but for all the contributions that he has made to education here and around the world. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks again, Dr. Reeves. Well, goodness gracious, Fearless Schools podcast listeners. As you know, every Fearless Schools podcast is special and filled with all kinds of wonderful pedagogical snacks and treats. And this edition has all of that and then some, because we're about to chat with someone whose work we've all admired, referenced, talked about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, if you are an educational leader, and we know that you are, you probably have a book on your bookshelf, an article in your filing cabinet, a quote in your heart with his name on it or somehow inspired by his work. Goodness gracious. Listen, before we reveal the name, here's a little bit about our special guest. Former Dean of the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education of the University of Toronto, recognized as a worldwide authority on educational reform. He advises policymakers and local leaders around the world in helping to achieve the moral purpose of all children learning. He received the Order of Canada in December of 2012, and he holds an honorary doctorate from several universities in North America and abroad. He is a prolific, award-winning author, currently writing a book right now, whose books have been published in many languages. His books have won awards all around the globe, including such titles as Leading in a Culture of Change, which was awarded the 2002 Book of the Year Award by Learning Forward, Breakthrough with Peter Hill and Carmel Crivola, which won the 2006 Book of the Year Award from the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, and Turnaround Leadership in Higher Education with Jeff Scott, which won the Bellwether Book Award in 2009. His latest books, listen, The Principle, Keep 3 Keys for Maximizing Impact, Coherence, Putting the Right Drivers in Action, Freedom to Change, and Indelible Leadership. In 2012, he was named an Officer of the Order of Canada for his achievements in the field of education reform as a scholar, teacher, writer, and advisor to governments in Canada and abroad. Woo! He currently serves as an advisor to the Premier and Minister of Education in Ontario and is co-leader of the New Pedagogies for Deep Learning Global Initiative. And most immediately, and most importantly, right now, he is an amazing guest on this Fearless Schools podcast. That's right, everyone. It's the one and only Dr. Michael Fullen. Good day, Dr. Fullen. How are you doing?
I'm good. You're leaving me breathless with that introduction.
I'm breathless and kind of perspiring. That was
I feel like I need a nap.
Yeah, well, it was fantastic. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
awesome. We can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to share your wonderful wisdom and insights with us today. Oh my goodness gracious! As I said even before we recorded, this is a surreal moment for me, and I know it is for Dr. Ann as well. Some of our very first books in the area of educational leadership were authored by your steady hand, so we appreciate you taking time today. So we're going to get right to it. With all of that work that you have done and continue to do, there's stuff that has to sustain you. We're going to go straight to the hard-hitting question. What is your favorite food in times of challenge or comfort or authoring books, or what do you go for?
Well, it's also it's tied into the setting. I'm up here at our summer place, which is 150 miles north east of Toronto, at a lake. It's
Nice.
called Chandos Lake. Beautiful. I'm just looking out past my camera here across the lake, the trees and all of that. So we actually
Beautiful.
do a lot of special barbecuing
Oh yeah.
here with the green
Ah.
egg. I don't know whether you know the green egg. It's what's
Oh yeah.
So we have it mastered. We do reverse searing, which is, I won't explain
Ooh.
the detail, but you get an image of it. It's cooking on low heat, but rare steaks. So we just enjoy the variety of food, and we eat our share of vegetables, of course, and good food on the farms around here. But also the barbecue is the relaxing end of the day stuff for us. So there's no limit to it. That is day after day. So it's fantastic.
Oh,
Okay, very important question. And Drew, you're
that's
you're from the South, so you might have the same question.
go ahead.
Does the barbecue have sauce on it
Mm.
or not have sauce on it?
Ooh.
It has sauce on it. Yes, yes.
Versus a dry rub, and that's what you're getting at right there.
When I lived a little more southern than Ohio, they're like, we don't put barbecue sauce on our barbecue.
We have a mixture, actually. Sometimes depends on the quality of the steak. Sometimes.
Awesome. Well, it's interesting that you bring up, like, obviously you're an innovative thought leader who's inspired a lot of people for educational reform and change, and so barbecuing, I think, goes along right with that. And you've already mentioned something that was like a reverse searing. So you're an innovator not only in the educational realm but also in the culinary one as well. So tip of the cap to you for that one. You know what? Where did all of that innovation and innovative thought come from? So we want to know about your origin story a little bit. What kind of a student were you? Dr. Michael Fullen, the apex of educational reform. What kind of a student were you? And maybe even, what helped you as a student?
Well, that's a very good question, and I did do 3 or 4 years ago a biography. So there is in my repertoire of books, there's a biography that covers a lot of that. I was totally accidental, I guess I'll say, in this career. So I spent most of my first 25 years, especially the latter part, the last decade of that, being a hockey player and wasting time.
Oh,
Wasting time as far as the intellectual future was. So I wouldn't say I was a slow learner. I was a late learner. So I
aha.
never got into this until I was in my 20s, and then
Okay.
my first job was age 27 as a assistant professor of education, and I didn't know anything about education at the time. I walked
Mm.
into the hall, so to speak, that first time around 1970, and didn't have much background and just faked it for a bit. And then I started to get closer and closer to schools, got interested in the phenomenon of change that was really just getting started. I think 1970 was the first big burst. Seymour Saracen, The Culture of the School, The Problem of Change, and John Goodlad, they were doing studies that said changes and innovations were being developed, but they were failing to be implemented. And so their research said failure, failure, failure. And I got interested in that, and I documented my own share of failure, but then shifted in by 1980 into the pursuit of what is quality implementation, what does success look like. That's also a bumpy story that we can get into part
Sure.
of. But I rolled up my sleeves and then started to get that. I didn't publish my first real book till 1982, which was well into my career. And then I did a lot because the changes that were happening was grist for the mill of sorting it out. And I wrote it to victory, so to speak.
Right, right. It's interesting that you bring up, the change and also the failure part of things too. That's something that actually has been on quite a number of our Fearless Schools podcasts. Is just the necessity for failure. So, do you mind expounding upon that a little bit, like the importance of failure in your process as a learner, and also just in educational change? How important is failure?
Well, I think that when something is complex, you have to sort out what success and looks like, and you can't do that just in the lab. You have to do it in the real world.
Hmm.
So I think there's a certain part of failure that's natural to getting to success. So everybody can understand intuitively. But I think we spent too long enjoying failure,
Mm.
if I could put it that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
The failure part, catching up, I'm jumping up a bit here. My basic textbook is called The Meaning of Educational Change, or The New Meaning.
Hmm.
And just last year, I did my sixth edition. They come out every 8 years
Gotcha.
or so. And the sixth edition basically said, when you look over the 60 years that I studied, which was 65 to the present,
Right.
if you look over those decades, the history of educational change is failure upon failure.
Hmm.
So we swanned around in failure for way too long,
Right.
and we can get to the turning point in that. But I want to say that the system of the work really spent decades of failure upon failure without making any corrections.
Mm.
And the reason for the failure, and it's in my latest book, the sixth edition,
Right.
is that it was always top down.
Mm.
It was always orchestrated from the top. And I concluded that you cannot bring about successful change from the top, no matter how smart you are. It's got to be different. And I think I think the summary statement I would make is that last century, I'm talking 1968 to 2000, I was really a researcher studying failure. This century, literally 2001 to the present, I've been trying to discover and create success.
Yeah.
There's a very strong divide in the two centuries,
Mm.
40 years of failure and 20 years of getting to success. So we're now working on successful examples, and I can tell you how to do that and how not to do it.
Yeah.
But the how not to do it was last century.
Got it. From the top down method.
Yeah, top down, exactly. Yeah.
So you're saying that, like, you see that happening less, that educational change is happening less top down, and so we're having more success, or do you still see that there are schools and school systems that do things top down and there's still failure?
I would say it a little more precise than that, in just terms of the actual work we're doing.
Hmm.
That yes, the failure from the top, that's been still stubborn because people come into government, they're there for 4 years, maybe sometimes 8 years, but it's never more than 8. So there's a lot of turnover.
Right.
They don't learn how to get better. So each group that comes in said, "Oh, I'm going to save the world," kind of thing, and so you get a lot of false promises and a lot of ignorance about how to do it. So I think that we haven't learned our lesson because people who get elected, they want to be in power. They want to do this. Even though it doesn't work, they think they will, of course, be an exception to the rule, which they won't be.
Right.
So I think there was that big factor of they weren't learning from their failure. That's one way of putting it. The second thing is that the nature of learning, the purpose of schooling, let's call it about this, it got more and more wrong, that either the purpose of schooling wasn't clear to students, wasn't appealing to students, was too much tied up in test scores.
Right.
So the research is crystal clear on this. The percentage of students who don't find schooling worthwhile for themselves, by the time they get to grade 10 or 11, the percentage who find it worthwhile is about 20%. I mean, that's shocking, really.
Yeah.
When you think of how important it is, the big phenomenon that it is, that you only have 1 in 5 students that are at all attracted to going to school, being in school. And that's been the case all of this century. It got a further punch in the gut in COVID. Then the kind of COVID took the roof off of what was already happening, and people then were able to stay home even more. I don't think I'll go to school today, kind of thing. But it simply wasn't attractive. And one of my colleagues who passed away about 3 or 4 years ago, Richard Elmore, you probably know his work, but from Harvard, he had studied how to be successful. He was quite good because he spent a lot of time in schools and classrooms and got some things going. But eventually, he got worn down by the failure for anything, even the good ideas to take hold. And he did a podcast 2 months before he died, January 2021. And in the podcast, he ended it this way. He said that schools have become obsolete the way they operate. I'm quoting him now. He said,
Yeah.
people won't stand for it. They will just walk away.
Right.
That's what he said. And he meant students and teachers. And if you take attendance and commitment to schooling, they have walked away.
Yeah.
It was way down, and it happened before COVID. It was aggravated by COVID, and it's even more fractious now because even the top down people are fighting about what to do, what not to do. You know the current story. So there's a lot of noise at the top, a lot of ineptitude, and it's worse off than anything. So people have just held back. We can talk, of course, in this what we're doing as an alternative. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But the fact is that story, which I've documented pretty well in the New Meaning of Educational Change number sixth edition, is really bottomed out. It's got nowhere to go. That's where we are. We're working on the solutions now, the new solutions,
Right.
which I'm happy to talk about at some point. But I'm kind of putting a bow on the past and saying it should be buried sooner than later.
Right. Go ahead, Ann.
This idea that we have to fix education.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody says we have to fix it. Where is that in this scenario that you're describing to us between last century and this century? Because I always felt that was very real. There's a lot of pressure as an administrator, as a central office person, that we have to fix things.
Yeah.
And I think it takes away from, we're already doing so many things well.
Yeah, I agree with you. How would you like it if somebody came along and said, "I'm going to fix you," and they didn't know what they were doing?
Right.
Well, that's what it's like.
Right.
So it seems odd that that would persist, but I think it's just the nature of the beast. People are used to doing things to education to improve it. And if you could just take anything, raising children, developing an enterprise you're working on, you can't have a "I'm going to fix this" attitude. You have to have, "I'm going to improve it. I'm going to work with whatever is in that system, and we're going to co-develop it to a solution." It's too complex, increasingly complex in 2025 and so forth. The world is so complex, you can't just do it with solutions. You never could, actually, but now it's even more obvious, and there's more harm done. And a lot of people, frankly, have given up trying. So the students have given up trying. And as teachers, a lot of them, even at the top, I guess the last big gasp was George Bush's No Child Left Behind. That was supposed to be the whole system improved. It was all well stated, but it was a disaster because it was, we're going to fix you kind of proposition. And it missed a lot of points. It had the wrong kind of feel to it. My friend Jal Mehta, who's also at Harvard, he wrote a book called The Allure of Order. ALLURE. The allure of people try to impose order on something that was more complicated. That still goes on, and we'll just see where it goes now. But I can talk about our new successes anytime when we're in this podcast, and I'll show you how they're different than the fix-it mindset.
Yeah. I mean, we'll definitely. That's definitely we're going to get to that because that's where we want to go. It's like you said. It's important to acknowledge in some ways what's in the rearview mirror, like the past. But we do need, like you said, put a bow on it.
Yeah.
We're done with the failure mindset and the failures. We're ready to go on to successes. I want to make a connect some dots here as both a barbecue fan and a hockey player. Right. I think that what makes barbecue and hockey successful is that the goals are extremely clear.
Yeah.
right? You know what kind of dish you want to make when you're doing the egg, and you know where you need to take the puck when you're on the hockey rink.
Yeah.
How are goals important in terms of educational change? Is that part of the issue? Like our goals are unclear, and maybe that's why there hasn't been so much successful progress in terms of change?
Yeah, I think it's a function of the goals being outdated.
Mm,
So the goals were the basics: literacy, numeracy, high school graduation, etc. Sir Ken Robinson, was a constant critic of the narrowness of the agenda, the
hmm.
factory model, he called it.
Yes, yes,
So decade after decade, the testing mania was what people took a simple view to it, and it was relevant perhaps in 1960, but increasingly the more complex society got, the more that wasn't what was needed. And it's the advantage of the testing and the basics is they're clear.
right,
The fact that they don't lead to very much or they're not interesting by themselves. So if you then switch to the more complex goals that we are working, our own goal set now is the six C's.
mm,
And so citizenship, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, creativity. In those six C's, those are the skills that people need in society, increasingly so with artificial intelligence, but
yes,
always has been, at least for the last 30 years, those have been very clear. Businesses keep saying that. They are harder to figure out. And that's why it was always easier to fall back on testing. It's clear. Parents take that, oh, yeah, my son got an A, that's great, or my daughter did this. So we got these false goals, and they weren't intrinsically interesting, increasingly so.
right,
So I think that those new goals are actually more attractive.
hmm,
And the way to put it, I think, is in our model now, is you need to first work on purpose and belonging. Like what is the purpose of education? The question you asked Drew a minute
yeah,
ago. What is the purpose of education? Not as straightforward as it sounds, but students will often have a different opinion than their own parents, even.
right,
So you got to get a purpose. You have to have a sense of belonging, and then you have to make the learning developmental and interesting, the pedagogy, or whatever word you want to use.
yes,
And that's where the innovations are now that we work with. We're working, for example, very successfully with Anaheim Union High School District in California.
nice,
It's a district that goes from grade 7 to grade 12, has 26,000 students to 20 schools, is high poverty, high diversity, and they have, starting with our ideas without us, and then 3 years ago we teamed up with them. I have a team of about 8 people, and we've co-developed now their new maximum development, where they're getting amazing success. And we, in fact, just finished a book 2 days ago on this that I wrote with the superintendent, whose name is Mike Matsuda,
hmm,
and another researcher, Barnett Berry. The three of us documented what's happened the last 5 years in particular, and where it's poised right now to be not only enormously successful in its own right, but also influential for other school districts in California, for example.
right.
Dr. Fullen, for our listeners, because I'm also curious, what does one of these goals sound like?
It If you take collaboration, it's students and teachers working together to develop the best kind of pedagogical experiences in relation to these. Now they're working together with artificial intelligence as a important to have the pedagogy or the teaching as the driver and the artificial intelligence as the accelerator, let's say it that way. So they have, when they're doing this work together, they have their rallying point. I'm just using Anaheim again as an example, is they call it the fifth C. It's because it's compassion.
Mm,
It happens to be, and they say we are teaching our students to be powerfully effective as compassionate learners who will be good for society and good in society, meaning
mm,
they get their jobs. And so it's tied into the kind of education they get, the new pipeline to the best jobs, and the career and technical education, things that are much more practical, but they're deeper and more powerful. They can measure them, they can describe them, the best you could ask any student in Anaheim of the 26,000 students, what are the primary goals that you have as a district? And they'll say, we have compassionate leadership. We have developing the skills to be able to get jobs in the new technologies. We are working together to learn from each other. We are having principals and teachers learn with us. And they do a lot of what they call frequent presentation of the learning as a method of confirming that they know what they know.
Right.
So these are, they call them sometimes soapbox things. Students there, all the students in Anaheim have done this where they give, let's say, a 10-minute speech to their peers, public, semi-public, on what it is they're learning and what impact they have. So they begin to develop the civic education. That's one word for it, but not the study of civics,
Right.
but how to be what does it mean to be a good citizen in 2025? What does it mean to relate to the workforce? So they're very conscious that they're being contributing, that they're having a better pipeline to their own life, but they're also contributing to the effectiveness of that community. And just as a footnote, they do better on literacy and numeracy than adjacent districts who focus on literacy and numeracy and are better off in terms of resources.
Right.
So the fundamentals that I'm talking about are not at the expense of the basics. They actually are compatible, but they don't have the tail wagging the dog, which is the basics trying to get you to a deeper level. That will never happen. Basics are basics. They're not beyond that.
Right.
So I think they've got the priorities right, and they're fantastic graduates or otherwise because we see them a lot.
Right.
I have one more follow-up for this. Just I'm envisioning listeners. I love everything you're saying. Completely agree. How then does this work with state compliance?
I was gonna.
As a
Very
person who
Yep.
as a person who had to do the state compliance piece, where, and having worked in California, where how talk to us about the conflict there, because that doesn't seem
Yeah.
talk us through that.
Well, you've hit that nail on the head for sure. They have in California, if you've been there, they have a dashboard, they call it, which have 9 measures of what it is to be successful. The state does that. And the 9 measures, they include reading and writing, linkings to parents, but they have a couple of other things than that. The answer is going to sound a bit rebellious, and I want to say it
Yes.
that way on purpose,
Yes.
I love it. Give it to us.
because our model, and it's in my new book on the new meaning of change, and in the new book with Anaheim, is to turn the system on its head. And what this says, first of all, what it is, and then I'll be practical. It is build the bottom. So you build the schools and the community, you build the bottom, and then you strengthen the middle. The middle is the district. And then the third one is you intrigue the top. So it's deliberately a bit provocative or challenging. We are basically saying, because we know the research, the compliance system isn't working. We know that. I mean, it doesn't even work to get compliance. So you know that, or you wouldn't have asked the question that way. So if it doesn't work as a compliance system, then it doesn't have much edge. So you have to teach people, as we do, not to be cowed by the compliance system, to develop the alternative engagement things that we've talked about. And in fact, literacy and numeracy does go better in these cases, anyways. And that if you're doing this as a system, and this is where I think the model of change is very important. We never work with individual schools by themselves. We only work with districts, minimum size. So this is 26 schools. We could work sizable schools. And more than that, we're actually working with multiple districts. So the second book we just did, based on the same model, includes 6 districts in California, Anaheim plus 5 others. They're consistently doing the same thing. So what we've been able to do is turn the power base on its head and then start producing examples of success that are scalable because they're coming from whole districts and multiple districts. And we're changing that. We're just at the early stages of changing the power relationships and then looking for ways in which the center, which is the state board and the state superintendent and the governor, et cetera, where they can start to appreciate the new model and start to shift their attention that they help rather than hinder the transformation of learning.
Right. I'm gonna that model where you said flipping the school, flipping on its head. I'm gonna rewind that tape just a
Yeah,
little bit.
building.
So building the bottom, strengthening,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
strengthening the middle, and intriguing the top. I mean, that's just yeah. That makes so much sense to me. It oh wow. At what point in your career did you become a revolutionary? Did you just say like, you know what, I could do the standard this way, but as Robert Frost said, you took the road less traveled. When did you reach that point in your career, or was that always there?
No, I think the best way of, because it's fairly clear in one division, the first half of my career, which was 65 to year 2000,
Right,
well, I was studying change, studying failure,
right,
basically.
right.
I wasn't the revolutionary. I wasn't the transformer. The second half of the career, which literally, conveniently, is the beginning of the century, was I began to work with others. I worked with the Premier of Ontario to
Hmm.
do some transformation of the kind we're talking about. So I became a reformer around the year 2000,
Got it.
whereas before I was a researcher.
Ah,
And now as a reformer in these from 25 to the present, all of our insights are co-developed with practitioners. I feel a bit guilty sometimes because my books, which are quite popular, I feel like I'm plagiarizing from practitioners because they have insights and they have the specificity that normally researchers won't have because they're not close enough to it. I'm good at identifying what I call sticky phrases
mm,
that come from our work because I'm getting those from. Actually, there is a tradition of research. Kurt Lewin, Lewin is the name that was famous for this, but he said things like, "If you want to understand something, try changing it."
mm,
So that way, he said that as a researcher. He
yep.
also said, "There's nothing so practical as good theory,
Mm,
or nothing so theoretical as good practice."
uh,
So we honed our insights in working with practitioners, and
yeah,
all of the language now we have, which is buttresses the role of the turned around system. All of that language is coming from our interaction with teachers and students and parents and others. But the particular articulation, I might get the concept from, I might have the concept myself, but I get it from them. I'll give an example that's not so direct. For
yeah,
example,
sure.
if you say, well, we know some good ideas about how to teach and do those things, but it's not happening enough. How do you get people to do more of
Right,
that? Yeah, and so one way, the top down way is say, this is the right way, it's working, you better do it. Here's even some support, but people feel like it's being imposed on
right.
them. We say, let's look at what the issues are, and I'll just give you examples from our actual formulation. We say that, for example, you have to go outside to get better inside.
Hmm.
That's just this one sticky phrase. Intuitively, you can get with it. A more interesting one is how do you get people to implement something that's good without forcing them to do it?
Right.
And so you can think, oh, well, we better be crystal clear about it. Well, that doesn't work. If you want to kill a good idea, mandate it.
Mm, yep.
So it's not, so you got to change that, and we've changed it by with working with practitioners, where we replace that language with language like here's literal examples. How do you get specificity without imposing it
Yeah,
with a good idea?
yeah,
We want to get proximity to practice. Just get that phrase. It's a liberating phrase. It's an innovative phrase. Proximity to practice, and then we get the particular examples of what that looks like, and they're highly specific. But we change compliance and compliance by saying our approach to to implementation is to never say you have to do this, but to create the conditions where people can try it out
right.
without feeling threatened because we're not imposing it inappropriately.
Yeah,
We're getting peers to work with peers. We're getting the results. We're celebrating those. So they are contributing to their own results. It's nuanced.
yeah,
I wrote a book in 2019 called Nuance, which basically says a lot of this stuff is not so straightforward. Here's a good idea. please implement it, we'll support you. It's much more nuanced into what's the meaning of doing this, and if I'm not prepared, how can I get better? If you want to see how a teacher gets better, they don't get better because your research tells them to get better. They don't get better because the idea is mandated. They do get better if they can work alongside somebody else who knows how to do it, and that person is supportive, not impositional, and there's a degree of empathy of figuring it out together, and there's about celebrating success. So there's clearly in a human dimension a way to do change and a way not to do change. Those that want change are often impatient.
Mm.
We can understand why they might be impatient, but it's wrong because it keeps giving change a bad name. And I actually remember a really good quote. I get a lot of quotes from practitioners. We were working in Australia in a district system that had 80 schools. It was the Commonwealth territory side. And so we worked there 3 years, and they got a lot of success over the 80 schools. So I interviewed at the end of this, after we were documented, with the assistant superintendent at the top. I said, this is really kind of impressive because over 80 schools, you got a lot of success, and this is unusual. And I said, tell me that, because the ideas are good, and that are using these ideas, is it voluntary or or is it mandated, the ideas? And he said, well, it's voluntary but inevitable,
Mm.
is what he said. So he was talking about the subtlety of making something happen over time. When you start with 80 schools, there might be 10 or 15, and then it spreads, and you're supporting it, and people are learning what we gain: specificity without imposition,
Right.
proximity to practice, bringing that open, which means people have to see each other teaching and help improve it. You need in Anaheim, each school has a 5C coordinator, which is the fifth C being one of the C's, and that coordinator is working with the school principals and teachers within the school to learn from each other about what it looks like. They're getting together with other schools and say, okay, with the 5C enablers,
Mm-hmm.
what do they know? How can we support it, etc. This gets to be owned by increasing percentage of the teachers and students and the community, and then they do more of it, and they're proud of it, and then they're willing to be even more innovative.
Wow. So much to unwrap there, because what was going on in my mind, first of all, as you said, you feel guilty because you're you work with practitioners and infuse a lot of what they said into your books. I think, and as Anne said at the beginning, you're an educational superhero. I think that's one of your superpowers, and I might call that like constellational genius. You know how to look for the stars and align them, whereas some people just see bright dots in the sky. So there you go. You take that to your next book. And then, I think too.
Okay, I already have a new phrase. Constellational
There you
genius.
go, constellational genius. But I mean, what you've described is, as a current middle school principal, exactly the world that I live in. The data comes forward. I see the numbers from whatever state score.
Yeah.
And if those numbers don't align with my hopes for what we were going to do, it gives me a sense of both urgency, which can be good, but then kind of a panic and an anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of school leaders wrestle with is, all right, now that I have this data in front of me, what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And how do I move this forward? And what you've described is a collaborative process that is voluntary yet inevitable.
Yeah.
Anyways, I want to thank you personally, because I feel like this is going to help out in lots of different ways. What, in addition to this constellational genius that you have, right? That's one of your superpowers. What do you think is another superpower that you have that helps you do your work? What makes you particularly strong, Dr. Fullen, in what you do?
I think it's because I team up with practitioners. I mean, my team, which is about 10 people, all of them are former school principal, former superintendent, hands-on, successful, have the sensitivity about these ideas, and we have formulated ways of moving forward. So one of my strong colleagues right now is Lyle Kurtman.
Mm-hmm.
And he just published a book called The Four Pivots, Pivots.
Yeah, sure.
And it came from our joint work together. I wrote 2 books with him earlier. And the first pivot is, I won't tell you all four, but you'll get an idea of this
Yeah, yeah.
because he's working on this. The first pivot is the North Star or sense of purpose.
Mm,
So what does that look like? How do you get that? The second pivot is how do you develop the capacity to move towards that? So you've got the sense of
yep.
purpose and the means of developing capacity individually and collectively to meet that purpose. The other kind of magic formulation is that I don't think I'm the original coiner and it's not a real word, but it's called simplexity.
Mm,
And complexity is taking complexity and getting the smallest number of key factors, always less than 10, but for me, it's about 5 to 8
right.
factors, and such as sense of purpose, capacity building, and getting those factors to interact so that you have the interaction effects
Hmm.
of what that, and that's in the six secrets. Those six secrets are organizations that got the incentives and those factors to interact in a way. So the main way to deal with complexity is to overcome it and contend with it with your own degree of complex capacity.
Mm,
And complex capacity is taking the key factors and enabling them to interact because it's like chemistry,
right.
right? When you have certain chemical things interacting, they produce amazing or not so amazing effects, but the effects are the interaction.
Right.
And that's what we're doing in Anaheim and the other systems that we work with. We are changing teaching from a lonely profession
Yes.
where students are on the receiving end of not very good learning to a interactive profession where not only are teachers learning from each others, but now students are in the co-development equation,
Hmm.
and they're thriving because their results are going up because the ideas that they're getting to, and when we find success over here, we're able to get school districts to interact with each other to team up on what's working and how to get more of it. So I think it sounds complex, but we're dealing with complexity. We're dealing with 8 or 9 factors,
Yeah.
not 20,
Yeah.
and it's manageable, especially when people own it and get skilled at it. They can't help wanting to do more of it.
Yeah. One of your phrases that I carry with me in a book that you wrote, I'm not sure when it was about de-siloing
Yeah,
and deprivatizing
yeah,
the practices of education, and that's exactly what you're describing to make those successes go forward. And I think part of that too is because the principalship can seem very siloed at times and very lonely at times. So that actually brings us to, if you're ready for it, that kind of brings us to our problem of practice. A question that has been submitted by one of our listeners out there in the field, right? Maybe a practitioner that you collaborated with. I don't know, but here you go. So they're asking a question. We want to get straight from Dr. Fullen. What would you say to this person out there? All right,
okay,
ready? Here it goes.
all right. Well,
Yep. Hey, Fearless Schools. I'm a principal in a K through 5 school. I've got a great staff and great students, but I'm not sure I'm making an impact anymore. How do I know that I'm making an impact as a principal, and what can I do to make more of an impact? I know it's a lot. There's a lot to unpack in that question. What do you think, Dr. Fullen? What advice would you give to this person out there?
well, frame it a bit general. I'm just working on this now, but the principle 2.0
Ah, there
because
you go. You got a book on it.
I did the principal. In 2014, I did the principal certain keys, but it wasn't the modern model. And the point 2.0 is what I'm describing here. So in that book, there's at least 8 vignettes from school principals around the world. These are 5-page vignettes.
Gotcha.
And I'll just give you a concrete one. A school in Northeast England called Ben Adlard was a basket case, terrible school for
Mm,
12 years,
mm,
etc. A new principal came in, and her name is Marie Claire Bretherton, and so it was to turn around the school. That was the problem of practice. Let's say 2 of the teachers that first week she was there individually came to her and said, "Whatever you've tried in your other school that's been successful, it won't work here. So don't even try it."
oh,
So that's the advice they gave her. So here's the problem of practice: a stuck school,
mm,
deeply stuck for years upon years. Teachers have no hope. Students in the community have no hope. What do you do as a principal?
right.
What she did was say, "I'm not going to fire anybody." This was the first meeting. "I'm not going to make any changes the first 8 weeks. We're going to, in one of our phrases, go slow to go fast."
Yep.
So we're going to get to know each other better. We're going to see what the issues are. Then we're going to start on a small basis. You got one of the principal, one of the teachers who was one of the most alienated, but was a good teacher. He'd just been alienated because of failure and negative messages from the government, all of that. She teamed him up with another teacher where they would help each other informally just to see how it went. She supported that. They started to love it. They spread that forth. And then they made changes that gave them, they became an award-winning school 24 months later. This is another one. Go slow to go fast.
Right.
You went slow for 8 weeks, painfully slow, probably given the problem, but then it started to kick in. Once it kicks in, it's positive contagion. Contagion is negative and contagion is positive. If you get the positive version, it goes just as fast as the negative. And I've written up that case in that book with a bunch of others, and we have those same stories in Anaheim and other districts. What you have to do is not be in such a hurry. Start to think of, read a couple of things like the principal book, think about what there might be. Start to
Yep.
see if you have any allies among teachers. Can we do something differently? You have to take a few chances if you're willing to fail a bit, but you're failing anyways if you're not getting anywhere. So it's not big chance.
True.
And so there's that, and teaming up with this. So I think that the new and also the brand new books we have from Anaheim and other districts, and the new meaning of educational change has a chapter on success stories. So
Mm.
you have to take the risk, but make sure that that the 4 pivots from Lyle, really practical. Anybody can
Right.
do them if they team up. So I think there's hope, and it's the good news is it's not very satisfactory to fail and be criticized year after year.
Right.
So they're not having a good time anyways. There's not much to lose. Why not take minor chances and have them align to the positive destination that could be made even under the present circumstances?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think you addressed that principal's question. So you get a star on the fridge for that answer. Thank you so much. And
It's not a constellation yet, though, but it's a start. Okay.
that's true. But in the book, like you said, you have vignettes
Yeah.
in the book, right? And so I think that speaks to another just a really great thing is that it's not just theoretical practices about change, but you're actually trying to capture positive narratives about
Yeah.
change, right? And so sometimes we get stuck in negative narratives, either ones that are currently happening, or sometimes we look through the crystal ball of our future and create these negative stories. So sometimes getting into a book with positive vignettes about change and principles of doing the right thing, that could be the thing that gets us out of that vicious cycle of self-criticism and self-negative prognostication, if you will. I don't know, lots of words.
Yeah. No, the positive recommendations, let's call them that are too far removed from practice. They're too theoretical, if you like.
Right.
They're not very helpful either. They're frustrating because you don't know what to do. And usually the person that formulated the direction is a professor who hasn't had much experience doing the work quite often. And so
Right.
that's why I team up with practitioners.
Right.
My kind of last thought here is I love this evolution of your work, Dr. Fullen. I remember as a young person starting my administrative coursework, engaging with my colleagues and saying, I love that this book has like boxes in
Yeah.
it, but our context doesn't fit in these boxes. There's these theoretical aspects. And then we're like, this doesn't reflect what's actually happening in our schools. So as a former principal, I appreciate this evolution of your work to work alongside practitioners. And I think
Yeah.
that we always need to remember that the answers are in the room.
Yeah.
Right? We bring the answers forward. You bring the answers forward. They don't necessarily come from you.
Yeah.
Walking alongside everyone to make it happen. I love this.
You can find the answers, if not in your room, you can find them laterally in other schools. Maybe that's why we like to work with the districts, where they're actually trying to have all 20 or all 50 schools be part of seeking better answers.
Right. And it's very much like your position right now, right? You're looking at a lake through a wide window, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I think what makes your practice sing is that you not only look at the lake, but you get out there in the lake, put your toes in the water, swim around a little bit, and see what's actually going on in the field. So bravo to you for all that. And gosh, Thank you once again, Dr. Fullen, for taking time with us today on the Fearless Schools podcast. It's no surprise. You were amazing. And Dr. Ann and I could listen to you all day long. Honestly, we really could. I got more questions now. Maybe we'll have to save that for another podcast. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. I appreciate the preparation you did and the style of this interview. Fantastic. It was just a good feeling for me too.
Awesome. Great. Well, our listeners, they got in their educational airplanes and soared into the friendly skies looking for a way forward. You provided them with a clear and compelling flight plan for their present and their future destinations. So, Fearless Schools podcast listeners, you did it. You took time out of your listening lives to check out another Fearless Schools podcast brought to you by Creative Leadership Solutions. And you should be proud of yourselves. It's true. Pat yourself on the back and then go to www.creativeleadership.net and then subscribe to and then share this podcast with anyone and everybody you know, peers, pen pals, pals without pens, family, pets, whoever and whatever. I'm Dr. Drew Tomlin, host of your Fearless Schools podcast, wishing you well and saying stay fearless on the bright road forward. Thanks again, Dr. Fullen.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed the interview. Fantastic.
Thank you, sir.